Grazie, Presidente. Good morning. Buongiorno, everybody. As said, I'm Matthias Maedge from NGVA Europe. NGVA Europe is the only European association and only stakeholder for you, the industry that is related to methane and transport. That is methane, natural gas, biogas, fossil, renewable, compressed liquid. And here's my first important introductory message. We are, of course, at the first Mediterranean LNG conference, but there is not either or. We need both, we need all of it. We need to discuss an intermodal approach because one will not work with the other. Jose from the European Commission has invited you to join discussions. There is a lot on its way. And when referring to the Clean Power for Transport package and the discussions we had over the last 3 years, obviously one way to join the discussions is to join the NGVA Europe. We have already many members of the industry in this room. You've heard that there is an Italian association of NGV Italy, and we are the European Roof Association. So industry is being represented by my association for all types of vehicles and all transport modes. So not only road, but also maritime. And I'm looking to my friend Antonio, who will discuss later, LNG and also air and rail. I'm not going to repeat the supply of natural gas history again, what we have already heard a lot this morning. Just some very interesting remarks maybe. You see that the pipeline network we have in Europe is not commonly spread in all of the European countries. And when you look to a country like Spain that has a very little natural gas pipeline system, it is not surprising that we already receive, or Spain receives already practically all of its gas as LNG and distributes the LNG with more or less 40,000 trailer movements of LNG per annum. So I think that's quite an impressive story. This is, of course, also the reason why you have LNG debates in some parts of Europe already, and it's now, I'm very happy about that, also getting a momentum in Italy. When you look at the importing and exporting countries in the world, we've heard about this a lot this morning, but there is, of course, one important part I would like to highlight again, because for European Commission and policymakers, it is fundamentally important to talk about security of supply. And one country which is still gray will turn blue, and that is the North American part. And this is important because we have major natural gas reserves in the world. We've seen a different map this morning. Here I've tried to split the conventional and unconventional resources a bit also and put it in relation with consumption and the years of reserves available. We don't have a crystal ball. I know it's a political debate of fracking and shale gas in Europe, which remains to be seen, but other parts like the US, they will do it, and gas will become and will be made more available. It's a current figure, interesting figure, that we have in Europe a total gas consumption of about 500 billion cubic meters, but not even 2 out of the 500 are used in transport, so very little. But due to the increased availability of the gas, we have, of course, an increased decoupling of oil and gas prices, and LNG trading puts the gas in a more competitive situation on global and especially also for us on European level. As you've seen in the US some years ago, $12 per BTU have now dropped to 2, maybe it increases back to 5, but we of course will see a carrying on of the growing spread between oil and gas. And when we now look about the LNG terminal development and how and where the LNG arrives to Europe, it's quite interesting to highlight again Italy and the Mediterranean area, because as you can see there are quite several LNG receiving terminals being planned, which will make LNG much more available in Italy and the Mediterranean region. A different Euromap is this one. It's always important to highlight again how many vehicles are there actually in Europe and where are the vehicles. So I'm particularly happy, of course, to be in Italy, the motherland of NGV, but as Maria Rosa earlier pointed out, even in Italy, we have, I think, a market share of 3%. So we are far away from being a big commercial part of the industry. But there is a momentum, there is growth. We have currently in Europe 0.5 market share overall. Of course, I'm referring to CNG vehicles. 1 million vehicles in Central Europe. In LNG units, we are more or less talking about some 200 units. So we are at the very beginning of this development. It's interesting to highlight again that if you look at the heavy-duty side in the city vehicles like buses and urban garbage trucks, we already have a market share of 15%, which is, of course, a good indicator to the environmental benefits of natural gas vehicles. Which is, of course, also why on the car side there's a lot of development. And don't get surprised that I show one slide at least on the CNG car development, because LNG as a fuel is, of course, also important for talking about CNG, because it opens the scope and gives a broader approach to the distribution and storage. The engine never sees LNG. The engine always sees never, whether in light or heavy, the same gas. And one thing is clear, natural gas, methane or biogas is the only fuel that is covering all. It is the best solution offer for all types of vehicles and transport modes, either CNG or LNG, and combined with the fact that it has tremendous environmental benefits, it is a very compelling story for policymakers, which does make a lot of sense, not only in terms of greenhouse gas emission reduction, but also local pollutants, NOx and particulate matter, and, as I said, in city applications, also much less noise. When looking at what the Commission has been proposed recently, I would like to take a quick look back to the white paper on transport that you, maybe all of you are familiar with, that has been presented in March of 2011. There has been something called CAS 21 under the leadership of the Italian Commissioner Tajani. And they all came to very important conclusions, where also methane has been highlighted as a main fuel of the future fuel mix. One thing should not be forgotten, and Kallas is saying it, the Transport Commissioner, the Vice President of the European Commission is saying it constantly, we have to grow out of oil and break our oil dependence. So it's a political target, and the limit and the options, the alternatives are quite limited. And there are not so many, actually. And natural gas is there, and it improves the quality of life. To be remembered, this year has been called the European Year of the Air. It's all about discussing air quality in Europe, where also there will be the Green Week in June this summer, where this will be highlighted. And here you see a quite interesting, or to some like myself, because I live in the black spot here, I live in Brussels, it's about air quality. And actually, if you look at the market shares of different technologies, in the Benelux area, where's the worst air quality, 80% of the market is diesel vehicles. So you can draw your own conclusions. And another important initiative, before I come to what Jose has presented before, there's, of course, the issue of so-called indirect land use change for producing biofuels. And the Commission has identified that we have a problem on the first-generation biofuel side. And this is, of course, closely linked to the 10% renewable target you might have heard about for transport, which has to be achieved by all member states by 2020. And this is why I'm, of course, particularly pleased that also Italy has now, in its energy degree, identified the important role of biomethane in transport. So natural gas on its own, whether compressed or liquid, is not the ultimate solution. We also need to integrate renewables, and there is not many fuels that have these advantages, because methane, there is no blending limitations like in the liquid fuel side of ethanol 10% and biodiesel 7%. And in combination with the fact that we can produce our fuel from waste, all sorts of waste, this is something where we say we can achieve the 10% target, which a much stronger role of natural gas vehicles in transport using a mix of methane, where also biomethane is either, as you can see here, injected in the gas grid or liquefied to use as bio in the heavy side. Talking about environmental performance, the shipping that has been mentioned, this is why I'm focusing more today on the road side. And here's the story for the trucks. A truck, the story for LNG in heavy vehicles is the range. It's not energy content, it's energy density. Because as you can see here, 1 liter of diesel, you would need more or less 5 liters of CNG, but only 1.5 of LNG. So the tank on the LNG truck is only slightly bigger than the diesel tank, and you can have the same autonomy and a range of up to 1,000 kilometers. And then we have different technologies. You've heard about dual fuel in shipping. It's not the same as in the truck technology side, but we have the same technologies. You have dedicated engines, Otto cycle, stoichromatic, and also dual fuel, where diesel is substituted with methane. For all markets, there is, of course, depending on customer demand, a reason for both technologies. It really depends. If there are any questions, you can, of course, come back to that. But I think we have another interesting presentation, for example, on the dual fuel technology by one of the sponsors of the conference from Ecomotive Solutions, a member of my association later on. As I said, LNG is at its beginning in Europe, and we want to demonstrate to the Commission that what we discussed during the last years, supported by industry, is not a myth, but it actually works. So this is why we have been granted funding by the European Commission to demonstrate that LNG in trucking is working. And we are now developing so-called blue corridors, and the project, the kickoff meeting in Brussels, is on 30th of April with 29 partners involved, and we start on 1st of May and build stations. As you can see here, we have customers that operate the vehicles, and the aim is the broad market rollout for the stations and the vehicles. So here you see such a filling station concept. And coming back to what I said in the beginning, in LNG stations, or if you compare with CNG stations where you use a compressor unit, in LNG stations, in absence of a pipeline, or where you use LNG for whatever reasons in a cryogenic storage, you have CNG practically for free. So you can catch different customer interest with one solution, which makes it very interesting. And the technology providers are here. I've shown here a picture of Vanzetti, gold sponsor of the conference. So you see I do also my promotional part of the job. The Italian industry is prepared. Italian industry has always been prepared. It's not only a story for Europe, it's a story for the world. But the world is looking very closely to what Europe is doing and discussing. And this, I have to highlight again, Jose, this is really historic. The European Commission has so far not proposed such a directive as in this case for mandating minimum infrastructure. It's very important for our industry and the customers to create confidence at both sides, and we've heard a lot about this. In combination with this, and this is a very last message I have for the audience, there's of course not only the Clean Power for Transport package in terms of standards and giving a market a push to the infrastructure development politically, but also there is direct funding available with the so-called 10T project or the 10T initiative. The recent deadline has expired. You can apply for funding for CNG, LNG infrastructure for road and maritime, and the next proposal for a new call is coming certainly end of this year, and I can only highlight and encourage you again to make use of this opportunity. There is funding available for this kind of technology support. If you allow, China, Europe lies behind, is much more advanced, so you see what could be reached. You remember 2 BCM gas sales in transport. China wants to go to 100 BCM, 300,000 vehicles by 2015. I mean, this is just to show LNG is happening in other parts of the world as well, in the US. And if you look at the market projections in Europe and the US, where we talk about market share figures, if we come back and focus again on LNG and freight, we talk about market shares by 2050 of possibly going up or beyond 30%. 30% coming from today, 0. So we are quite ambitious, but this is the last concluding slide, and I don't highlight all the points again, but natural gas in transport is a no-regret option. It works everywhere, and there are very limited options for LNG in heavy vehicles and in shipping, and this is why we are convinced that this is a successful, compelling story. Thank you very much, and sorry for the slight exceedance of the...